PlayStation 1 has to be one of the most advanced consoles of its time. It was capable of rendering fully 3D scenes at a very good speed. However, due to PlayStation 1's hardware limitations, the developers who made these games had to face various kinds of problems and had to find various creative ways to solve those problems. And thanks to those creative measures taken by the developers, we got some very iconic looking games, which up to this day are a very unique style of its own. And the recent indie devs have picked this very iconic style up and they decided to recreate it on their modern hardware. However, creating those similar aesthetics of that PlayStation 1 due to its hardware limitation on a modern game engine is easier said than done. And recently I have been experimenting with some of the PlayStation style effects and some of its various texturing and LED modeling and other things and all in the Unity game engine. So I decided to create a mini tutorial series. So this tutorial series is going to be divided into a few parts, and this is the first part of it. And if you're watching it after a few weeks of its release, there's probably a second part too. So I would recommend you watch this part and then move on to the second part. In this series, I'm going to be explaining some small details and some bigger details on how to create a PSX style or PS1 style scene for your game that you're working on. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how you can install and use the PSX renderer package for your Unity project. So let's get started. Make a project that uses the standard render pipeline, no URP or no HDRP or anything like that. Just the standard core render pipeline that comes with Unity built in. Okay, so let's start by installing the package called Haunted PS1 Renderer. It's a custom scriptable render pipeline renderer for Unity made by this awesome guy. I'll be linking the entire GitHub link in the description. There's an installation guide here and you can go ahead and read it, but if you don't want to read it, then just go ahead and follow my tutorial the way I'm showing you. Okay, so download the entire code or from here, or you can just go ahead into the releases. Also, you need to make sure you have a GitHub account, and creating a GitHub account is very simple. Just use your email address. Then scroll down and download this Haunted PS1 zip file. Then you need to save this and then open it up using your WinRAR. Now head into the directory of your newly created project and you should see this packages folder. Now while keeping the window open of your WinRAR of the Haunted PS1, back off and select this com.hauntedps1 renderer file and then just drag and drop it into your packages folder. You have to do it exactly like this. And once you're done moving the files, go ahead and normally open up your Unity project. Okay, on the top left corner, if this Haunted PS1 thing shows up, then it means that you've successfully installed the package. So go ahead into your player settings, build settings, then go into the player settings, and underneath this graphics tab, you need to assign this PSX renderer thing from here. This should be the only one available there. And then you should see that your scene has turned completely gray, but don't worry about it, we're going to be fixing it. For the ease of use, if you want to create your own renderer asset, then you can just do so from doing here from here, and do it here from like this, and then also create the resources and stuff. And then you can just go ahead and assign this to the same way into your player build settings, but you really don't need to. You can just use the one that's already included into it, but that's just something you can do. Okay, so back into the project. Now go ahead and select your materials. Go into the materials folder of your project and select every single material that there is. And now we need to change all of these materials from the standard shader to the custom PSX shader. Okay, that took almost 10 minutes to process. Okay, so now you want to select this PSX LED. You can also use the PSX terrain for terrains, but I'm gonna just go with PSX LED if my laptop allows me to do so. It's really trash, but you get the idea. So I'm just cut this part anyway. Okay, so once all the materials have been changed to PSX shader, now as you can see, everything is back to normal. So now one thing that you'd realize that the fog that comes with the Unity built-in does not work. Also, none of the light sources in your screen will be working, and there are no post-processing effects anymore, and a few other things will not be working, such as occlusion, culling, and other stuff. But I guess if you're making a PSX game, you don't really have to use that option anyway, because all the textures and the materials are going to be really low size and low quality anyway, so you won't be having to worry about the optimizations or anything. Okay, so we're all set. Just go ahead into the right click here, hierarchy, and create a volume. Create a global volume and make sure it's global, and from here you can just start by creating a new volume profile from here. Shit, I just hate my life. Okay, that took quite a while, but anyway, we're back. So from here you can see there's a new profile, and now you can start adding overrides. So first of all, you need to add the first override that's going to be allowing us to apply the effects, and that is this quality thing over here. Okay, congratulations, you've finally set up the entire project. So now I'm going to be going through those effects, and I'm going to be showing you how you can set it up so that it doesn't look like a mess. So I've done the same processes here, but I've moved on to a different scene. So let me just show you how you can fix this entire thing. Add this radio volume, and this is where we're going to be fixing this noise thing. Turn down this noise intensity thing to completely disable the noise. And you also want to change this thing. I'm going to keep it simple. You also want to change this barrel distortion thing to 0. It basically fixes those distorted ends over there. And there are a lot more options. There's the vignette and some other options here as well. There's bloom over here. I want to turn the bloom completely down to get that dark and gloomy PSX effect. Then there's the scan line sharpening and the image sharpening, which basically does exactly as they say, sharpens the image and other sharpens the scan line effects that you're seeing on the screen right now. So there's this great mask thing which controls this TV dither type of thing, and there's an intensity for it. You can just play on with the values to get something that looks just right for you. I'm gonna be keeping it to a little low so that it gives me that dark and gloomy look to my scene. Okay, now time to add a camera volume. Go ahead, add an override and add the camera volume. And this is where we control the resolution thing and also control a few other options. So as you can see, by changing these two sliders, we can actually control the resolution. So I would recommend you keeping this a little high. Actually, I want you to keep it completely high, because when we turn down the resolution from here, as you can see, due to anti-aliasing, the pixels get really blurry. So I would not recommend you doing this. I would recommend you just keeping it on a very high resolution. And we're going to be adding the pixelation later down the road by a render texture or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty simple for that. So you can just do that, keep the resolution really high, and set up the first resolution slider to very high, and then just put up the second one as well, and that's how you basically set up a resolution for this one. So as you can see, if I turn them both down, it kind of takes the resolution very down. So from here, I'm going to be setting them both high, something like 2000, and yeah, that's very much it for the camera one. So now let's add in another override, which is the precision volume. So this is a very interesting override, and this is where the main magic of PSX thing happens. So this one controls the color precision, and also this one controls the vertex geometry thing, and also some other options. So the first one is the geometry jitter, which is basically known as vertex jittering. So this creates that wobbly effect on the textures. And as you can see from here, here's the geometry thing. Here's the geometry pushback. We don't want to use that. And from here, here's the color precision thing. And by changing it down, you can create the look of that PSX style effect or something like that. You want to keep it something a little bit down so that it's not fully accurate to the texture's original color. So you're going to keep it something like that. And underneath that option, there's the chroma option, which further goes ahead on that same color thing. There's a more detailed video from the creator of this render pipeline, which I'll be also linking in the description if you want to watch that. But this is a quick rundown of every single option over there. And then there's the affine texture mapping, which does exactly the same. It, as the name says, it does the affine texture mapping thing. So you can just turn that on for the stretching of the texturing when the camera gets too close. Now there's the frame buffer dither, which controls the intensity of the dithering on screen, and then there's the dither size that controls the size of the dithering. So this completely depends on which resolution you're viewing your game from. So I would recommend setting it something like something a little less for 1080p output, or if you're using a 2K display or 4K output, then it would be completely different for that. So it completely depends on how your game looks or which resolution it's using. So play around with the dithering settings. There's the intensity, which is the frame buffer dither, and then there's the dither size, which controls the dithering size. Basically, that's pretty much it. Now another option, which is the tone mapper volume, which, well, does exactly as it says. It applies some of like a little bit tone mapping to it, such as contrast and, you know, saturation and other things to it. This one's not very interesting, and it's very basic, so if you see it you understand what it does. But it basically controls some color values as well. It's basically like the a shorter version of compact post-processing that comes with Unity. So there's saturation, there's grayscale and other things, so I'm gonna skip this one because it's very simple and self-explanatory. So the next one is the compression volume, and you don't want to use this because it basically makes your game look like shit. So we're not going to be using that. And now we're going to be using the lighting volume. So this is interesting because this one allows you to have lights into your scene, and not only any normal light. This actually allows you to emulate the original vertex lighting on meshes and textures that the original PSX had. So for example, let me show you. I'm going to set the resolution to 1080p so that the tethering is a little bit clearer over here, as you can see here. So there's more tethering around the areas. So now I'm gonna go here and create a light. So if you hadn't add that light volume, you will see that none of the lights actually don't work unless you've added that light volume to it. Now let me just real quick set up a light here. Now onto the global volume and enable this, and as you can see now we have lighting. So this is not just any lighting. This light will actually move when you move the light. As you can see, this dynamically lights the vertexes accordingly to, you know, your vertex geometry jittering, and this emulates the way the original lighting on PSX worked. So my PC is really shit, so I can't actually properly show you how it works, or like it's not fully smooth, but you'd get the idea when you do it for yourself. So go ahead and set up some lights for your scene, and then we're going to be playing around with the volume settings. Okay, now select the light volume, and from here, as you can see, there's a few options here. You don't want to touch the final 2-1. This actually controls the vertex lighting thing, so you want to keep it at default, or you want to lower it down a little bit. Here's the big light intensity. This basically controls the entire scene's areas which are not properly illuminated and controls their intensity. The third one is not very useful, and this one over here is pretty useful. This one actually controls a similar type of thing, but it's for dynamic lights. So for now, as you can see, this is how it works. I really can't properly explain. Also, another thing, like I said, the actual built-in fog and none of the built-in things that comes with the Unity's built render pipeline will no longer be working because we're using a custom render pipeline for this thing. So yeah, that's something you might want to look out for. Also, another thing, you'd realize that the skybox is not also working, but there's a skybox volume specifically in the global volume settings, so you can add a skybox or a color, or you can use the fog color, or you can use a custom colored tile map thing. So we're going to be going to that later on. But yeah, that's pretty much for it. So you can go ahead and play with these light volume settings just to light up your scene. So yeah, let's add another volume. This one's going to be the fog volume, and this one's the most interesting one. This adds the PSX style fog into your scene. So from here, come down here, enable it, and then set this 100 to 0, and then you can just slowly increase it a little bit. This actually creates this fog effect, and then from here, the start one, you can just make sure to assign from which distance the fog is going to be assigned. And this is the diffuse thing. You just want to do a lot thing, and this is the precision alpha, and this controls the precision alpha thing, like, you know, that the original PSX had, that weird janky looking fog. And this is the color volume. As you can guess, it just controls the color of your fog. Just want to keep that at default or something like that. There's a lot of options here. Then there's also the fog mode, there's the over, and there's the additive. I'm gonna go with additive, and also gonna set the fog mode to cylindrical, and this is subtractive. You don't want to do that. You want to keep this to additive. And well, this is basically the fog settings that I'm going for. I will not be going into any details. Like I said, if you want more detail, you can just go ahead into the creator's website, creator's video that I'll be linking in the description. And well, there's the second layer of fog that you can add and other things like that, but that's pretty much it. You can just go ahead and play with them and find something that suits you better. Okay, so now finally we're going to be adding the sky volume, which is this one. And well, this is, well, what you'd expect. This is the sky volume thing. You can change the tethering on the sky. You can also set it to a solid background color. You can also, like I said, from here you can actually set a skybox texture for it, like a cube map or something. So you can do that, or you can just set up a tiled one, which is you can create a manually colored skybox for your scene, like you guys can see here from here. As you can see like this. So this is not very interesting. I'm just gonna set this to something like fog, using the fog one, because we're trying to create that Silent Hill look on the scene. And well, that's pretty much it. Well, that's the end of the entire rundown of post-processing effects. So now you can just tweak the settings and see which setup suits you the best from the fog settings, the lighting settings, and precision volumes and other things. Okay, so for this last thing, I ignored it purposefully because it's not very useful. This actually allows a few weird animation type of things to your entire screen, and you can watch this from the creator's video. I will not be going through this because it's not really practical to use, and I won't be using it at all either. Now you can change the values of the settings from here and there and see how it affects the scene. As you can see, if I turn off the dithering completely, this is how it affects the entire scene. And also my laptop is very shitty, so I can't properly display the entire thing without dropping to 2 frames per second. But like I said, you can change around the values. It's completely up to you. And let me just real quick show you what I came up with. Okay, now you can use the PS6 fake gliding tutorial that I have on my channel. You can use that to implement that into this project, or any other project you want. So I'm gonna be real quick showing you how you can do that. So go ahead into my Patreon, or if you don't have my Patreon, you can just go ahead into the tutorial where I explained how to make this thing entirely from scratch. And if you are subscribed to my Patreon, which you can do for just $2 a month or so, if you want to support the channel, you'd be able to download this package from here, and then download this package, import it into Unity. Once you import that fake light package, you would see that the material is not working. You have to again select the material of this light thing and then manually change it into the PSX select shader the way we did on the first part of the video. So you need to do that, and then you can just drag and drop the light cone and start aligning. Don't worry about it looking weird. Select the material, and from here change it from lit to unlit because it's a light material. So now we're going to be tweaking this light and its material to make it look more like a light. While selecting the light material from here, you should get something like this. You can change a few things from here. You want to set this to per pixel, and as you can see, it looks really weird, but we're going to be fixing it like I said. And go down here and you should see the emission thing. Now turn this completely to white, and then you want to set the emission to something like 1 or something like, I don't know, maybe just 1 should be fine for now. And this is something like this. You should get this. Now on the material, enable alpha clipping, and then you want to also enable this dithering thing on the alpha. Then you want to change this slider like this, and as you can see, we're already getting some fall off in the end. Then you want to change that slider. You want to sort of like up and down that, and you also want to move that slider into the middle part for a little bit more fall off, and like this. As you can see, there's way too much dithering over here. Also, you might just real quick resize it a little bit so that it doesn't look weird. Also, while selecting your fake light cone, create an actual spotlight. You don't want it to be a point, you want it to be actually a spotlight. And let me just real quick turn on the gizmos, and then you want to change its rotation and align it exactly with your fake light. And then you want to increase its range because light sort of illuminates around its areas, and then to give it a little bit of sense of depth. Now on this fall off settings, you want to edit this a little bit, and then there's a few things here. You don't want this light to be affected by fog. Then you can just turn the fog weight down, and as you can see this. Now you can just turn this here from take it to the middle part to create a nice fall off effect at the end. And as you can see, we're already getting that light effect. So yeah, just do that. You also want to change the rendering mode from both to front only to get this sort of transparency effect, and then you can change from the blending mode to additive or overlay or whatever you want to use. I wouldn't really recommend you using additive. I would recommend you leaving it on the first one, but I'll just go with this additive. And then there's the transparent. It should be automatically set to transparent. If it's not, it's set to opaque, then just change it into transparent itself. And then there's the other few things, such as if you want it to be affected by vertex jittering or not, those type of things, and I would just leave them for now. If you want more detail, you can watch the original creators video. Okay, so that settles our PSX renderer feature. Now we're going to be going to some smaller basic parts, since this is the part 1 and I want to cover mostly very important stuff for this one. So we've successfully learned how to use this thing, and if you want more details, you can go ahead and watch the creators video for this PS6 renderer pipeline, which I'll be linking in the description. So yeah, congratulations, you completed the first segment of the video. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, quick answer for the previous video which I made, where you guys mentioned why are there white lines on my skybox. So as you can see in here, this is a traditional Unity skybox, and see the placement here, the way the skybox maps are placed. So in this one, however, the one that I used or I showed in the video didn't really have that, but I did actually fix it on using a sort of image editing software. And as you can see, I fixed this one. I shifted those over there from there to this, so that kind of fixed the part. And this is the original one that I showcased in the video, this one over here. So as you can see, there's a difference. I moved those parts to here, so just do that and every single skybox that you get should be working just fine with your Unity project. So for the textures, I use a website called textures.com. Some of the textures here are paid, like the actual textures, but we're not going to be using them. We're going to be using the photo textures instead, because making a model using photo textures is much easier than using any PBR material or anything like that. Just head on over here and select the photo textures from here, and you can just go ahead and look which kind of texture you want. You can even use keywords such as rust or car, abandoned, metal, leaking, such keywords, and from the menu you can, like the filter menu, you can just set textures to appear as only photo textures, and then you can just select these photos and download whatever you want. You can spend each of your credits for one texture each, like 1 credit for one texture, and we're going to be selecting the lowest resolution possible. Don't worry, the resolutions aren't that shitty, but they're just enough for you to make a PS1 style model anyway. Okay, just to prove my point, I'm going to be making a real simple PS1 model using just these textures and Blender. You can download textures, save them up, create a very simple model with using just cubes and stuff. Then you can just subdivide it, make some really cool geometry with it. You don't really have to go overboard or fancy or anything. By using the photo textures and keeping the poly count really low, you can just make a really decent looking PS1 style texture, like PS1 style model. Since the models don't really need any kind of detail and all that stuff, so you can just get away with having wobbly textures or wobbly materials, or weird looking models, just slapping on that image texture on top of it. However, while using the PSX shaders, you would get a simple error, which is the when you take down the geometry very low or even keep it at middle, you might sometimes see that your models or 3D models are freaking out. That's because of the models not having enough vertices. So to fix that option, like the thing happening, you can just select your entire model and subdivide it a few times. I'll be showing you how you can do that. Another handy trick, if you're having problems with texturing, just select the model, hit U, and then from there just select project from viewport, and like that you can just easily project UVs onto your models, like on the textures by selecting it. That'd be much easier than just manually unwrapping the entire thing and just moving on to different textures. Sometimes you even might need to hand paint some of the models or hand project them by selecting each of individual vertices. And to fix sometimes the stretched out texture, you can just do that same thing and just select project from viewport. Just to get things a little bit nicer, I'm going to be setting up a few lights and showing you how to do it. Okay, so now like I said, if you're having issues with your models freaking out when you lower the geometry count on your PSX shader, then all you can do is just select your model and open it up in Blender or any other 3D editing software. Once you open it, select it all, go on to edit mode, and then from there you can just select the entire model and then hit right click and just subdivide it a few times till it has enough of these squares, which are basically vertices. and that should fix your wobbliness and prevent your texture, I mean your model, from freaking out when you lower the geometry count. That should do for the first part. So I really covered the modeling and texturing part very little, but I would like to make a much more detailed version of it. So stay tuned for part 2, or just, you know, leave the tutorial, leave the channel right now after all that you got. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe though if you really enjoyed the video and if you want more videos like these. The entire project that I showed will be available in my Patreon for you to download and check out for yourself, or you can just follow on the tutorial. The link is in the description, and you can just download the PS6 shader from there, set it up on your own project, and if you make something really cool, don't mind leaving a link in the description for me to check out what you made.